Captain's Log 19, Captain Jim here, and a couple of eagle-eyed people may have noticed that it is in fact Captain's Log 19, and I've screwed up some of the numbers on the Captain's Log, replicating 16. And I'm here in the lovely Premier Inn in Hemel Hempstead, just west of London. So for today's Captain's Log, and this is a little bit long overdue, I'd like to review the book The Dragon's Path, which is the first in a series for the Coin and the Dagger series, of which there are currently 4 books. There's also The King's Blood, The Tyrant's Law, and The Widow's House. These books, the Dagger and Coin series, is written by Daniel Abraham, who is one of the writers that wrote The Expanse, which you may have seen some things about recently, including mostly from me. And I was told to read this and suggested by somebody in the comment section of the Expanse series video that I did. So I thought I would review them. I thought they were actually really good books. Basically what it should tell you enough is the quote on the top of the book is by George R. R. Martin, saying everything I look for in a fantasy. So that should at least give you some idea of what it is. T. Frank, of course, being the other writer of The Expanse with Daniel Abraham, who wrote this book, used to be one of the researchers and assistants for George R. R. Martin, so that's probably why he knows him. It is exceptionally good. I don't know whether I'd rate it quite as highly as Game of Thrones, but it's very similar in its style, so if you enjoyed the Game of Thrones series of books, The Song of Fire and Ice, then you'll probably enjoy these too. It's done in a fantasy world where a race of dragons used to rule over with sort of advanced magical skills and powers, and there were some humans, and basically they enslaved the humans and made a series of different races and versions of humanity to serve them as slaves. So there are 13 races of humans, including First Bloods, which are normal humans, and these races include various ones that have horns and hair and scales and insect-like, and some of them live in the water, called the Drowned, which are kind of separate from the rest of humanity. But basically there was a war between the dragons thousands and thousands of years ago, and they're wiped out, and humanity's taken its place as now the sort of inheritor of the world. But it's these 13 races of humanity that have built this world and civilization based on the ruins of the Dragon Empire, of which there is very little left. So the dragons, it's something like 5,000 years or 10,000 years since the dragons were gone, and they had a material called Dragon's Jade, which is pretty much indestructible and looks like jade. It's green and stuff, of which they made Dragon's Roads and a few other things from as well. So they're the only things that remain from the Dragon Empire, and humanity's built up around these Dragon's Roads, which still lace across the world. Yeah, it's about this fascinating world, but it's done in a style that's very similar to the Song of Fire and Ice, in the sense that it's sort of real world politics and real world issues and problems of these people in this fantasy world that's not really that fantasy world. It's not like it's high fantasy like Lord of the Rings might be, for example, or Warhammer books that you might read or anything like that, which would be considered high fantasy. Or, the Wheel of Time and all that kind of stuff. They're quite real world issues and problems, and people aren't always clean cut good or bad, and it actually follows several characters in a similar style to Song of Fire and Ice, following from the perspective of several characters. A ex-former general called Marcus Weston, who's essentially a mercenary now, but he used to be a very famous general, and there was a civil war in the country he's from, and he fought for one of the kings and basically won spectacularly a series of battles, and got to the point where he was his king was crowned, but he became very paranoid of him because of the power and the loyalty that he had with the soldiers in particular, and so in order to try and keep him in line, he burnt the house with Marcus Weston's daughter and wife in it, thinking this would keep him in line. Of course, he then spent the next several months plotting his revenge and killed this king and put the other one in charge, and then is left obviously somewhat upset into the world to become a mercenary. So he's one of the characters with his sergeant who follows him round as well, in a very similar style to Patrick Harper from the Sharp series of books. It also follows another character called, I think Kithrin is the way I've pronounced it, Sithrin, not quite sure how you pronounce that. Here, send in your comments as to how to pronounce this word, please. And she's a young girl of about 16 or 17 to start with, and is actually kind of brought up by the bank. So her parents died when she was very young, and they had some money in the bank, the Bedean Bank, which is the large sort of global bank of the area, or of the country, and has branches all over the place. And so she was brought up with the bank as her guardian in a city called Vanai, and when it's under siege at the very beginning of the book, she has to escape, and slowly she's very unsure of herself to start with, and doesn't know what's going on, and quickly folds into her own character, and becomes a person of repute and well-known sort of power throughout the world, particularly with her links to the bank, etc., etc. Don't want to give too much away. Some of the other characters it follows, there's one called Gedar Palico, who is a bit of an outcast. He's a kind of noble in the Antean Empire, but he's not particularly highly placed and not well thought of with people. Bit of a geek really, and a nerd, and he's into books about speculative fiction and history, and he's a bit fat and not very physical, and he's kind of the butt of lots of jokes. And through a series of events, he rises to great fame and power, partly because of a little bit of him, but he happens to be in the right place at the right time and makes bold moves, and has a very short temper, but really looks nothing more than just sitting on his own and reading his books and stuff. And he has his own part to play in the world as well, and it follows him somewhat as well. In the initial series of books, it starts following also a guy called Dawson Killiam, who is a very high noble in the same Antean Empire as Geldar, and he's highly raised and knows the king very well, and was a childhood friend of his, and he's very resolute with keeping things the way they are, and the nobles should stay in power and the servants should stay down, and all this kind of stuff. And then it also picks up following his wife as well, as she becomes more intrigued in later books as well. And gets into the politics of things going on. And it's set in this world of sort of the old dragon empires gone completely, and the intrigue of all the courts in the different countries. And various things are afoot. Not to say magic's coming back into the world, quite like in Song of Fire and Ice, but another dormant enemy of the dragons has sort of been reawoken and is coming back, and people going on a quest and all this kind of stuff. But they kind of, some of the characters know each other, some of them don't, and they're a little bit separate, but their lives are very slowly sort of interweaving, and it's all very interesting, and nobody's clear-cut good or bad particularly, and people perceive some of them as bad, but as you read, they're getting mistaken, or they're doing things they think are right and they're not. So it's kind of good in that sense that it's real people, and they're sort of, not to say real problems, but the way that they might deal with these situations in reality. So basically all I'm trying to say is I enjoyed these. If you like fantasy, and particularly ones that are more involved in the people than the events, then I suggest you go and get them and read them. Apparently it's going to be a series of 10 books. He's done 4, and this is the first one, so I think you should go and check it out. I got about halfway into this one and then went and bought the other 3, so pretty much enjoyed it. Overall, I think I give it 4 stars, as per my unique rating system, but in this case I think we're going for 4 stars out of 5. Quite a good score, enjoyed it. But that's pretty much it, so Captain Jim out.